World Stroke Day is observed annually on October 29th to increase global awareness about stroke. As Nigeria joins the world in marking World Stroke Day 2025 with a theme, Time to Act Fast, it underscores the serious nature and high incidence of stroke, aiming to raise awareness about prevention and treatment and ensure better care and support for survivors. To commemorate this year's World Stroke Day, Stroke Action Nigeria, in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Health and several partners, is implementing community-based activities across various states. A series of stroke assemblies, conferences, seminars, and workshops are being organized to increase public awareness and understanding of stroke prevention, signs and symptoms, emergency response, post-stroke rehabilitation for survivors. This is what we're going to be talking about today on Nigeria Today. Thanks for joining us on the program. I'm Ikaria Clinton. Now, with me in the studio for this conversation is Dr. Mahmoud Mustafa Zubeiru. He's the head of Mission, Center for Wellbeing and Integrated Nutrition Solutions. It's a pleasure to have you in Nigeria today.
Thank you, Ikaria. Thank you, Nigerians.
Also with us in the studio for the discussion is Dr. Suleiman Lamurde. He's the head of Non-Communicable Diseases, National Primary Health Care Development Agency. It's a pleasure to have you in Nigeria today.
Thank you for having me, and good evening, Nigerians.
So I'll start with you, Dr. Zubeiru. Talk to us, first of all, you know, a lot of persons have this perception about stroke. Everybody has his own interpretation, whether especially the non-medical personnel. So tell us, what does stroke really mean?
Thank you. Good evening, Nigerians. I think let's break it down to the basics. And in simple layman's term, stroke simply means there is an interruption to the blood supply to the brain. So anytime you have that interruption in the blood supply to the brain, you have a part of the brain that is affected, not being able to deliver its function. It could be any part of the brain. It's not selective, and say. Now, that interruption of blood supply to the brain could be as a result of maybe narrowing or occlusion of the artery, as a result of a thrombus, what we call a thrombus, or an embolus. And it results in what we call ischemic stroke. Ischemic stroke means there is not much oxygen delivered to that section of the brain because it doesn't have that oxygen, so it cannot perform. The brain is a very sensitive organ, extremely very sensitive. And 1 minute denial of oxygen will result in some damage. Now, the second variant of that stroke is if a blood vessel that is supplying a part of the brain ruptures. So there is bleeding in or within or around the brain. Then invariably, because of that bleeding, also that part of the brain cannot get the adequate supplies again and will be affected and give you the various symptoms. And so depending on which part of the brain is affected, so you can have a stroke in which you have just one arm affected, or even a side of the face affected, or even speech slurred, or even vision. Sudden blankness, darkness, blurring of the vision, or even balancing. You're not able to just even get up and balance yourself. All these are symptoms of stroke, and that's why that fast is a very good concept in trying to manage stroke.
Okay, before we
it doesn't necessarily mean. No, let me just explain something. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have total paralysis, because it could be some only weakness. The most important thing is that a part of the brain has been affected and is providing some kind of clues to you that you have a clinical symptoms. And there is a time frame within which we say it is stroke, because there is also what we call transient ischemic attack. So once you have this neurological deficit that has persisted for at least 24 hours, we say that is stroke. occasionally, I'm sure, you've gotten up from sleep and you just feel some kind of dizziness or spinning.
Yes.
And you say, oh, what is that? Or you suddenly got up and you feel fainting, right? All those ones may be small little ischemic attacks in the brain, but they're very micro. So you don't feel it immediately, you recover and there is no deficit and you keep on going. We call that one a separate thing, transient ischemic attack. It could be a prelude to sleep, it may not be, but it's different. So for the stroke, that interrupted blood supply to the brain with neurologic deficit that persists for at least 24 hours. They will now say you have a stroke.
Okay, now, Dr. Labrede, talk to us about the risk factors of this stroke. What are the major risk factors?
Okay, thank you very much. As Dr. Mahmoud has rightly defined what stroke is, there are a lot of risk factors that lead to this stroke. The number one risk of stroke is being hypertensive. What do we mean by being hypertensive? Once the blood pressure of an individual is above the normal value, which is a range, not specific, usually 120/80 millimeters of mercury and below is being considered as normal. It could be slightly elevated, but not up to 140/90. These individuals that have less than 140/90 blood pressure are normal. Anybody from 140/90 millimeters of mercury is said to be hypertensive. And hypertension is the leading cause of stroke. What are the other causes of stroke or hypertension? Because stroke is a complication of hypertension. Hypertension is a form of cardiovascular disease. Now, if we understand this very well, we'll now look at other risk factors for hypertension as potential risk factors for stroke. These include, number one, sedentary lifestyle. When you tend to live a life of less physical activity or inactivity, you are having high risks of hypertension, which might lead to stroke. Eating of cholesterol in high quantities or eating fast foods or junks, depending on how our listeners understand this. Things like snacks, most of this uncooked food, a lot of baking things, sugary things, these things potentially add the cholesterol level in our system, and that leads to what Dr. Mahmoud explained in terms of the stroke, because cholesterol will go and deposit along the capillaries, along the blood vessels, narrowing the passage of normal blood flow. By the time this consists and persists over a long duration of period, the blood vessels is compromised. Either it throws an emboli, as he mentioned, that can lead to this stroke by leading to an ischemic one, or the occlusion stops the blood flow and the blood vessel ruptures, and it leads to what he mentioned as hemorrhagic stroke. Other things are excess salt intake. Salt is one of the major leading cause of hypertension disease, which will ultimately lead you to stroke. An individual is supposed to take not more than 500 milligrams of salt per day, which is about a quarter of your normal teaspoon. But by the time you look at our food, most of our foods, especially those that are being preserved and kept, you put Maggi, you have salt. So you realize an individual takes maybe 3 to 4 spoons of salt in a day, which is not good.
Which is high.
Very high, for especially an adult. For growing children, it's a bit tolerable because they need it for some growth and so on. But for an adult, we don't need it. Now, other things that lead to stroke or risk factors to stroke is family history. Anybody that has a family history of stroke, the father, the mother, or the grandparents, you potentially have that risk. and therefore you need to be on the watch out. As I mentioned, anything that leads to hypertension will ultimately lead to stroke. Other factors that are to this is some use of some medications, depending on the individual. And then there are other disease conditions. When you see hypertension, it always has a partner, diabetes, for example. Any individual that has a diabetic disease is likely, almost 90%, 80% will come with hypertension disease. And any hypertensive is at risk of getting stroke. Other disease conditions are like sickle cell disease. These are also diseases that affect blood flow in the body, and because of that, they are all potential risk factors for hypertension. So these are among so many other things that can lead to hypertension and will ultimately lead to stroke. So we have to look at all these things and then try to control them to avoid being hypertensive, which will lead to having stroke.
Don't mind me, the other time you saw me giggle a little bit because my director was saying, if you can change your family name, since you're talking about the lineage of the okay.
It's not easy to change, but that's the reality. The most important thing is awareness. If you know your parent or any of your family members have this condition, it's not a crime, it's not a sentence, it's not a conviction. Rather, it's an alarm to be on the watch. Okay. What do we mean? I usually tell people that among the non-communicable diseases that we have, hypertension is one that is a bit friendly because it gives you some signals. And you as an individual can play a very important role in you having it or preventing it. For example, eating. What do you eat? How do you eat? When do you take your meals, your last meal of the day?
Does that also have a...
Yes.
Is it also a factor?
Yes.
When you take your last meal?
When you take meals late in the night and go to sleep.
Like what time?
Dinner is supposed to end at 8 p.m.
8 p.m.
Maximum.
So if you take 9, 10?
It's not good for you. It's not good for you. Especially if you are above 50. Children can afford to take some of these things.
So some of us are eaten by dinner around 10.
No, it's not advisable. Once you cross, let's say this.
Once you cross 40 or 50.
In fact, it's advisable. In some climes, restaurants even close earlier than that. Last orders in places that people that live long in the world, their last order in their restaurants is at 7 p.m. Okay. For example, Japan.
Thank you very much, Dr. Suleiman Labrede. Now, talk to us, Dr. Zubairu. You earlier on you mentioned, you talked about the symptoms. I also want to find out. Of course, he's talked about hypertension. What about diabetes? What role does it play in worsening the case of a stroke patient or even causing a stroke? And also, when someone feels, probably you feel numbness sometimes in maybe your left hand and your left leg. Does it have anything to do with stroke?
Okay. So I take the first one. I think with diabetes, there are two pathways to get stroke. The first pathway is what he has mentioned, that you try to get, causes you to get hypertension, and then you get stroke. But diabetes on its own will cause what we call atherosclerosis of your vessels, which means the blood vessels get thickened and narrowed because of a lot of deposits. And then your blood again becomes more viscous and does not flow easily, right, when you have diabetes. So that tends to limit the quantum of blood supply to any part of the brain that may be affected, because the blood vessels in the brain are very, very sensitive blood vessels. So you can see diabetes also has another pathway. And so other factors you could consider also would be things like obesity. People who are overweight, they tend to have diabetes. And then diabetes now takes you to stroke. So weight control should also be part of those measures that you should institute. And it has nothing to do with all other things but your behavior in terms of eating. How you eat, and you can see the relevance of him trying to tell you that, hey, why don't you limit what you eat, especially that you are after EBA. But that's on the lighter. That's on the lighter note.
Yeah.
So the symptoms usually for stroke, it is a sudden thing. I think people should understand that it is sudden. Now, depending on how it comes up, you'll be able to know the type of stroke that you have or not. If it comes suddenly, it consists of, let's say, a weakness or numbness in one hand and one leg. Yes, it's a telltale sign that you are having stroke. If it comes with, let's say, a facial distortion, you smile and one side of the face turns the other way.
Refuse to go this way. Maybe you're smiling.
Okay, turns the other way.
Okay.
Let me just put it that way. Then it could be a telltale sign.
Okay.
If you have just sudden severe headache that is accompanied by some neurological deficit, that's what I mean, numbness or something like that, this could be a telltale sign that
there's something going on.
Stroke. Now, the good thing about stroke is that for ischemic stroke, which I described earlier, the one that is as a result of either narrowing the blood vessel or something blocking it, if you act fast, we can easily prevent it from happening. So it won't be too much. So it's about timing to get to the facility for that one. But for the hemorrhagic, you even need to act much faster to arrest the bleeding and prevent brain swelling and other things from happening. That one comes with severe headache, vomiting, and rapid deterioration in the consciousness level of the person.
And the person can even lose his or her life.
Yeah, for the other ones, it's more or less, it's sudden, but it's insidious. So you can see the progress appearing. Oh, numbness. It's heavy now. I can no longer lift it. Power lost. You can see those progression. But for this other one, it's rapid. Suddenly with blackness, you're totally blacked out. You're moved in, and that is hemorrhagic for you. So, and I also want to draw your attention to one other thing that could cause stroke. People who have cardiovascular diseases, especially heart failures, they are more likely to throw an embolus. A small thrombus that has formed in the heart is thrown out to go and cause that stroke for you. So you should also be careful about those kind of people.
Okay, the theme of this year's World Stroke Day says time to act fast. What message does this convey, to us?
Yeah. So what is trying to say, as he rightly mentioned, is that once you have stroke, the time allowed or the time allowance you have to be able to support the patient, it's very short. You need to act fast. For example, family members need to know these signs and symptoms he mentioned. Otherwise, they might say it's a traditional thing, it's a witchcraft. When they see somebody's mouth deviating or cannot.
So what are they expected to do at that point?
Immediately you notice any of these signs he has mentioned, they must take the person to the nearest health facility. The health workers in the facility will be the ones to be able to determine what type of stroke it is. Is it a stroke? Is it maybe a TIA, as you mentioned? And be able to know, is this something they can handle in their facility or something they have to refer to a tertiary facility? For example, if you have a patient that has a hemorrhagic stroke, the diagnosis alone requires a kind of imaging of the brain, and that is called CT scanning. And CT scan is not a machine you have in every primary or secondary facility because of the specialized nature of its operations, the power it requires, and so on. So these are machines that are found only in tertiary facilities and some few secondary facilities. Sometimes you go a whole state, have only one. So if this patient or this person that is suspected to have stroke is taken to the right facility in the right timing, if we are lucky, we'll be able to have health personnel to intervene and be able to help the person recover, because the recovery is not a very fast process. It's a slow process that requires medical support, psychosocial support, physiotherapy in some cases, as well as a lot of emotional support. So many things comes into the management of a stroke patient. But the reality about the theme is that what is key, once you suspect stroke in any individual, please take him to the facility, to a health facility immediately. Whether you are sure, whether you are not sure, whether he has had it before or not, the most important thing is, the most important action, take him to a healthcare personnel in a facility fast. When we talk of fast, the first 30 minutes to the first 3 hours are golden.
Okay.
Once it's a hemorrhagic stroke and it's not, no intervention is given beyond the first 3 hours, the complications that comes with it can be enormous and overwhelming. We're always optimistic.
What are some of the complications?
A lot.
Right.
It depends. Let me be frank. Once you have a hemorrhagic stroke and it happens in a part of the brain that you cannot intervene, you are likely to even lose the person. But in some part of the brain and in some specialized centers where you have neurosurgeon, they do what is called a borehole.
A borehole?
Yes, they open the brain and clean up the place and tidy up the bleeding.
Okay.
So this is a specialized procedure that can only be done in a tertiary specialized center.
Okay.
Because we can count, I don't know whether Dr. Mahmoud have the numbers of the neurosurgeons we have around the country. So for us, especially at the National Primary Health Care Development Agency, the key to stroke management and prevention is awareness. Once a patient has stroke, we have already entered an undesired environment, an undesired position that we need a lot of specialized care and attention. Okay. But if we can prevent it, that's the most important.
I was coming to that. So Dr. Mustafa Zubairu will tell us, how do we, what are the preventive measures?
Okay. So basically for stroke, if you know the risk factors, you want to avoid those risk factors if it's avoidable, or you want to modify your lifestyle so that those risk factors no longer constitute a major risk for you. So let's take it one by one. You have hypertension, and you know the causes of hypertension. What do you need to modify? If your hypertension is as a result of increased use of salt, would you want to reduce salt intake? Simple. Oh, you have diabetes or pre-diabetes, because we can also know that you are already, so God in His infinite mercy will show you signs. So you have a stage, you are in pre-diabetic. You know your glycosylated hemoglobin is already up to 6. We say you are in pre-diabetes. What do you need to do? That is the time you need to modify your behavior. Eating late, reduce your weight, make sure your blood, reduce consumption of sugary substances.
What have you exercised?
Sedentary life. So we don't want you to stay for 5 days without any exercise.
Okay.
So that's a very key lesson that everybody must take and go home with. So you also have to constantly be on the move. Constantly be on the move. The human being was made for that.
And also check your blood pressure.
Check your blood pressure.
Check your blood pressure. If you need to take the
become a physician already.
Hypertensive person, you take your
check
drugs.
Your blood pressure all the time.
Make sure you take your pills and to avoid.
So some of the things that we do in the public space is actually that's mass screening. For such awareness days, we do screening for all this.
Okay.
So as to raise the consciousness of the society itself to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mahmoud Mustafa Zubairu, Head of Mission, Center for Wellbeing and Integrated Nutrition Solutions. Thank you so much for coming on the program. And Dr. Suleiman Lamrde is the Head of Non-Communicable Diseases, National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much. And let Nigerians stay safe by checking their BP and using salt.
And thank you for being part of the program. I'm Bikaria Clinton. Goodbye.